My name is Stroker, and I'm a private investigator. To explain why I'm lying unconscious in a pool of blood, we have to go back a week.
You can't hide. I'll kill you.
He doesn't know who we are. He won't find us.
Stroker and Hoop, 800-555-0199.
Damn it, we still have those things?
All kids out of the pool!
Stroker and Hoop. Something at the time that wasn't exactly mind-boggling, but still very much something very brand new to the table. But most importantly for that time, it was just fun. It was this fun, stupid, hilarious, and ridiculous new show that just, even with the 13 episodes, there was just something for everybody. Two degenerate private eyes in their talking car. Action, dance moves, possession, David Copperfield, Alf. 5 episodes in, they'd have their own X-rated parody.
Did someone call for Detective Stroker?
And his lame-ass sidekick Boob? Wow, what a makeup job.
Anytime I go back to this show, I'm just dumbfounded by how clever it can be, like 85% of the time. Like even with this one, an episode that was brought into production, and the first claim was that it was simply unairable. In the wake of this network finally venturing into mature rated content on a much larger scale than ever before, let alone could ever truly be anticipated that soon in, they do that one. For the time, it was by far the most obscene thing they could have ever possibly put out. But you know something, you go back to it, and it's really not all that gratuitous as you would think. I'm not even equating how much barriers, specifically in media, have changed so much in the course of my lifetime. That's not even really the point. But I'll tell you something. When this episode first aired, I was a bit of a horny fucking bachelor myself. Ah, shit, but you know what I mean. I watched Girls Gone Wild, I knew who Ron Jeremy was. Just them doing a racy episode wasn't enough. They were calling shots on just about all the popular shit at the time. And I didn't think about this in such a way back then, but for a creator to know his own audience like that, you know, to give us a good laugh and then be like, hey, you know, this other shit you're into, it's kind of exploitive. And of course you can say whatever you want about it, but I think that actually was a very smart thing to do. In 2005, for me, this is really nothing more than just this late night underground show me and my friends would watch that I knew I liked it and I knew it was good, but I could never exactly pinpoint what made Stroker and Hoop so enjoyable. And it's a good-minded comedy first and foremost, okay? I'm not making a very triumphant case that it's the most sophisticated piece of art ever because it's distant lands away from that. But even still, after all these years, I can just list off a handful of things that made Stroker and Hoop far more complex and unique than anyone has ever given it credit for.
You son of a bitch!
Hey, what the hell?
Dad, what are you doing?
Get him away from the children!
I'm sorry, everyone, but it's not my fault. It's Ron Howard's making me do this. You gotta believe me.
Come on, keep fighting,
Stop it, Ron Howard!
Let's look at the log line for the show real quick before I get too ahead of myself. Yeah, see, when this show was pitched, the big names that were brought up were Knight Rider, Starsky and Hutch. Wasn't like Aqua Teen lying about being detectives just so they could get on TV. No, Stroker and Hoop followed the buddy cop angle quite well, but you can just tell by most of the footage I've shown that one particular role in the show, most of the time, is barely even secondary. And that's part of what I love about it. It never had to tie itself down to one close-minded idea, or for that matter, even go full-blown absurdist. It valued originality first and foremost, and it valued parody as well, but it also knew what was a healthy mix of parody and what wasn't. And going back to the network side of things, it being one of the first to introduce MA content to the channel, that wasn't the only big deal. You also have to bear in mind that back then Adult Swim wasn't giving half-hour shows to anybody, and this was one of those rare exceptions. I mean, a 12 to 13 episode run before abrupt cancellation, that's still quite pitiful by itself, but it was really that 30-minute runtime that made it such a gamble. There are sitcoms out there in general that are barely captivating enough for that half hour. And Adult Swim's typical method of 11 to 15 minute runtimes, by trimming it down that much, they made for more entertaining and more feasible television. I mean, look at what Casper Kelly did before creating Stroker and Hoop. He wrote for Birdman. He wrote for the one 11-minute launch show that was repeatedly claimed to be so funny that the 11 minutes just went by. When all this was done, he went on to Aqua Teen. We were just talking about that brand new season a couple months ago, how it was still effective as ever, even with the runtime being trimmed down to just a few minutes. You know, with most of these comedies, I could believe that less is more. But not Stroker and Hoop. For that one, the half hour was perfect.
What are you gonna do about it, bitch?
Sir, you are out of order.
Oh, yeah? This whole proceeding is out of order. Hell, this entire country is out of order.
That's enough.
My only regret is that I didn't save a bullet for you and this incompetent sketch artist.
Bailiff, restrain this man.
That doesn't even look like me, man.
What I've found about Stroker and Hoop, it's become this lovely 2000s time capsule, and I've always known it for having this happy-go-lucky atmosphere. I mean, that was always part of the charm, but what made it truly stand out, it was all those fucking characters. I mean, I feel like at this point I've seen it all and nothing really phases me anymore, but I pull out these old recordings of mine. I sit down to actually enjoy them all over again, and not even thinking that it would have the same punch like it did all those years ago. But sure enough, in a lot of ways, it's just how I remember it. One way or another, this motherfucker would say or do something, and I'd sit back like, wow, they actually went there. John Strockmeyer. You know, the standard for dads in sitcoms that still exist to this day, you have one of the two options. Either he somehow forgets how to read or tie his shoes, or he forgets how to eat, or you just get a run-of-the-mill Archie Bunker clone. Funniest thing about Stroker, he was one of, if not the first, to just really lay his cards out on the fucking table. I mean, this guy was such a wreck. He was barely living on his own. His ex-wife hated the shit out of him. His son, more often than not, just flat out resented him. I mean, his brother, Steve, for God's sakes, he was an attorney. He was an ambulance chaser, and even he looked his brother flat in the face and told him that his whole detective thing was bullshit. And getting to that, well, let's just talk about the worst thing John Strockmeyer has ever done. You see, a long time ago, it wasn't Stroker and Hoop, it was Jermaine and Stroker. And you see, Jermaine, he was the more competent one. He was the one that actually paid attention to the billboards, for instance, making sure there's no typos on the sign. But anyways, incompetence was exactly what got Jermaine killed. You see, there was a bad gunfight out on the street. Stroker forgot to mention he borrowed a magazine. Jermaine dies. And you see, normally this would be very traumatizing for a partner. But John's just a little different. Jermaine dies in his arms, and John's first instinct was not to call up 911. Nope. To call up the wife that he was banging. Oh yeah, he was fucking his partner's wife the entire time. So by the Christmas special of the show, they flat out tell you that Stroker does not deserve his current partner nor the entire agency that he has. The guy used to sell mattresses before all this. And it's heavily implied that whole past is not behind him in the slightest. If the price is right, and it does just enough to feel his self-centeredness, then he will do just about anything you will tell him. He is a snake oil salesman before anything else. But I would not want it any other way whatsoever. John Glaser was so fucking funny with this. I feel like if there's one character in fiction that's so admirably blunt, it's got to be, he's got to be up there. And to his credit, there's actually been a decent set of times where you actually do root for him. I would say his son Keith is actually just as admirable and as unique as he is. Because in the show, they try to paint his son like he's just a real wimp, and you see him get bullied, and he's really just fucking normal for his age. His predicament is the most messed up in the entire show, but he sticks up for himself. At least always near the end. I mean, I said that there was resentment there, and there is. There definitely is. But, he's also a reflection of his own father. Whenever Stroker's actually competent on the job or somewhat, he's always nervous and he's always kind of just not wanting to be there, just very awkward. And his son's the exact same way in that regard. And both of their worlds are rocked up in a certain way. But push comes to shove, his son will hold his own. He'll tell his dad to man the fuck up whenever he has to. And in the end, he still stands by his dad and they're still able to enjoy each other. Hoop Schwartz, a private dick that has a notable resemblance to Andy Dick. But no, Speed Levitch really made this one his own. Very good comic relief character. What I love so much about their dynamic and sort of the format of the show The two characters are not necessarily confined to each other. Oftentimes in episodes, they'll move away and they'll do their own thing, and it was always fun to see their different motives on things. Hoop was a very emotional one. If Stroker was killed, Hoop would go above and beyond to avenge his best friend's death. But if Hoop was to stumble in the way of any Stroker's plans and got him into hot water one way or another, Stroker would be so pissed he probably wouldn't even hesitate just to kill him. And that's what makes their dynamic so funny. They got a good chemistry like that. But again, it's also really good when the two are separated. I already told you how much Stroker stands on his own, but Hoop's got his own going on too. I mean, he's stuck living with his mom. Hoop loves his mother. There's a very wholesome relationship there. I almost blacked out the most messed up fucking part in the entire series where Hoop's innocent mother was framed in one of the cases and they actually put her in prison. So you get this poor innocent old lady stuck in a correctional facility. And I remember before commercial break, that poor old lady, she went into that prison shower and she just got shivved in the ass. Man, that was too mean. I think what makes Hoop such a major target in the first place is just the firm association with Stroker. So the duo is very much heads and tails. They get a win here and they get a win there. One way my opinion has drastically changed. The talking car, even back in 2005. I remember people saying they were trying too hard just to make that car funny. And I actually enjoyed Carr a lot. I thought Paul Christie did a fantastic job, just like everyone else. Mid-2000s, it made a lot of sense. He glued together the aesthetic of the show. He was a very specific angle of parody. And not only that, he was a win-win for Adult Swim's Memo. For them, having something that was anthropomorphic was always good. But I guess the remarkable thing really was going back to that show and realizing he wasn't that much of a main character as I remember him being. Actually sometimes being a very crucial part of the team and other times being nothing more than a prop character. I mean, he's literally a talking car, but still, like, for that time, he was a big sell.
What the hell were you thinking?
Listen, Double Wide.
No, you listen.
Curtis Armstrong. If not for John Glaser, he would be the top asset in the entire show. Just absolutely fucking hilarious. He toes the line between emotional immaturity and just being a borderline fucking sociopath, but in a good-natured way. No matter what situation he's in, he always responds inappropriately, and he'll always have something to rant and rave about, but he's harmless. Just this batshit crazy guy that works at a body shop. That's what makes it so funny whenever he always manages to get caught in the crossfires. Then there's the other underdog, Coroner Rick. You know, for this exact time frame, Ruckus quickly became his golden ticket. But the thing with Gary Anthony Williams, he was always good with those little comedy roles. He was always very big into improv, so his work on Stroker and Hoop shows that exact same dedication to his craft. Coroner Rick, of course, deals with the bodies on Stroker and Hoop's cases, so they work hands-on with each other on top of, like Double Wide, he's also that one buddy that sticks out for the team. He goes back and forth between playing the nutty doctor and playing the voice of reason on the show. And in the end, actually, he's the one that connects all the pieces together.
Stroker, we were all there. We don't need to hear about it verbatim. This isn't some dumb flashback episode in a sitcom.
Christmas time, 2005. My people, we would always celebrate the day before. So in terms of the actual holiday date in America, it's always been lax for me. But anyway, '05 was coming to an end. And all in all, still to this day, it was one of the most wonderful years of my entire life. For that particular winter, like the prior death, that was really shitty. And I guess there were still some other things on the news to get pissy about. But in general, I remember late December 2005 just being very laid back and relaxed holiday time. So during that Christmas night, whenever I was all mellowed out, there was a brand new Stroker and Hoop. And it was weird because they had already aired a special like a while ago. And even Adult Swim went on the record to talk about how screwy it was. But it was two things. I mean, for one thing, it just wasn't logical to take an extended break when you only have like a couple episodes left in the rotation. And then there's the actual finale itself. It was both a clip show and a cliffhanger. They were shitting on two different tropes all at the same time. And the reveal was the most batshit ridiculous thing ever. Their idea was that the big villain at the end of the season would be these random fucking background characters that actually were in all the previous episodes, and they just decided to make up some maniac story out of that. Then, of course, it all ends with them plummeting down the canyon. To be continued. Oh, okay. I thought to myself, oh man, 2006 is going to be one hell of a year, and sure enough, I was right. In fact, undoubtedly Adult Swim's most fanatic year of all time. But Stroker and Hoop? Never heard from again, unfortunately. You know, and I always said they dropped the ball. For years, that was like the one cancellation where I was always like, oh man, you're really fucked up there. And it's not just me, there's still some people that still hold that sentiment to this day, but I mean, at this point, it's just history. With Adult Swim's condition right now, I mean, there's upcoming projects right now where I don't even fully trust that they'll get it right. You know, they got the talent, but there's not much faith to be had with the company anymore. That's not a knock, that's just how it is. And with Stroker and Hoop, I think enough time has passed where I definitely still don't like the cancellation, but I can sort of see why they felt like it might not have been all that beneficial to latch onto long term. I think numbers had something to do with it, and even though they had folks like me, I guess they felt like the overall demographic wasn't really helping much at all. This was the golden age. It was one of those many shows on the network where there were promos, but you couldn't advertise something like that with a straight face. Hell, I can't. But that's how it was always supposed to be. And I should iterate this too. Nobody really cared about the cliffhanger. That last episode actually had very little bearing on why we wanted the show back in the first place. It was part of it. But nah, it was mostly shitty that something that was so hilarious and creative and inventive was cut short, and that was just the end of it. That was the real death of Stroker and Hoop. But I'll tell you this much. They did right by keeping Casper Kelly around all these years.
At least I try to look feminine.
In the final episode of Stroker and Hoop, there was one particular segment that I felt like it was so goddamn funny, I felt like it outweighed the entire ordeal. They were kidnapped by that unexpected assassin, and then they brought urine into the mix. So they all start choking to death on piss fumes. And at the very brink of death, they all have this piss-fueled hallucination that they were on a previous episode of Speed Buggy. There was one very ungodly hour where the producers of the show brought Curtis Armstrong into a recording booth and had him recite the very lines,
I'm gonna feel my own breasts.
With everything Stroker and Hoop did to distance themselves from Adult Swim's past, that non sequitur brought everything full circle. 5 years into Adult Swim, and that brought in, an homage to Birdman, Space Ghost, the formation and roots of Adult Swim's launch, and even beyond that. Sort of takes you back to Casper's contributions before Adult Swim even existed. He was one of the many at Cartoon Network that were just throwing shit at the wall, seeing what would stick. Having this massive Hanna-Barbera library and fuck all to do with it. Years went by, he's rose above that and has done so much more. 15 years after Stroker and Hoop, December 2020. Stark contrast to the Christmas before. You know, and that the entire world just went in fucking shambles. Staying at home, not wanting to see family, not really enjoying or celebrating anything. Unemployed, drunk off your ass, that usual type of sombering shit. But I got wind that Casper was getting another big Christmas break. It was a 3 o'clock in the morning one-off for Adult Swim's infomercials. Danny Ketchup was what the show was called.
I'm having a whale of a time. Referencing the harpoon.
My golf shirt. I can't go golfing looking like this.
So I tuned into that late hour, and I swear to God, I was laughing like a fucking bastard for that entire 11 minutes. It was just what I needed to get out of that groove of everything sucking now. Escapism at its finest. I was missing that type of tomfoolery for a very long time, and it made me realize that type of happy-go-lucky fun was never actually dead after all. So that all being said, instead of lamenting the endless possibilities and what could have been with Stroker and Hoop, well, I don't know, we're still in hell, I guess, aren't we? But if you see any new funny shit, let me know.
All right, cut. Print that bitch.
Now, can I get my money?
No, you can't get your money now. You're only half finished.
New episodes of Stroker and Hoop, Sundays at 11:30 on Adult Swim.